Hello friends, welcome to WINGRAVITA, and today we are going to talk about astronomy, and that is the stars and solar system lesson or the Our Universe lesson. So stars and solar system lesson is the name of the chapter in the NCERT textbook, and Our Universe is the name of the chapter in a textbook called Science Ahead. So this is for class 8 and this is the part 3 video. video. So in the previous videos we talked about how very large distances in space are expressed, and we also talked about the basics of constellations. We talked about what is the idea of a constellation. So in this video we will try to recollect the idea of a constellation, and we will also talk about these constellations in detail. Okay, so let's jump into the lesson. So first of all, what is a constellation? So a constellation is a group of stars. It is a group of stars forming a recognizable shape. Okay, these are a group of stars forming a recognizable shape. They form a recognizable shape when seen from Earth. So such groups of stars are known as constellations. Okay, so constellation is a group of stars forming a recognizable shape when seen from Earth. Okay, so that is what is a constellation. That is what is the idea of constellation. So how many constellations can we see from Earth? So in total there are about like 88 constellations. There are 88 constellations. So 88 is the total number of constellations. So 88 is the number of constellations that astronomers have approved. Okay, now why is this constellations useful? So in the ancient times, if you see, in the ancient times, these constellations were used for navigating the seas. They are used for navigating in the seas. And they were also used for determining what season it was. So they are also used for determining the season. Okay, they are used for determining the season. They are used for navigation. So they can be used for navigation and seasons, for determining seasons. Okay, so this is how constellations were helpful in the ancient times. Okay, so now we talked about what is a constellation, we talked about the total number of constellation, and we also talked about how they were useful in the ancient times. Now let's talk about some main constellations. So there are 88 constellations. In that we will talk about some main constellations. So we will talk about 4 main constellations. So now let's talk about the first constellation. Okay, so the first constellation that we are going to talk about is Ursa Major. So we are going to talk about this constellation. So as you can see, it is a group of stars, isn't it? It is a group of 7 stars. It is a group of 7 stars. So what does this Ursa Major represent? What recognizable shape it forms? So this Ursa Major forms a shape of a spoon. It forms a shape of a spoon. Okay, so it forms a shape of a spoon, and to be exact, the spoon, this kind of spoon, is called a dipper. It is called a dipper. So what is this dipper? So this dipper was used in the ancient times. It was used in the ancient times for drinking water. Okay, so this dipper is kind of like a utensil which is actually used for drinking water in the ancient times. Okay, so this is what this Ursa Major, this is what this constellation represent. Okay, so if you see here, in the handle of the spoon, in this handle of the dipper, there are 3 stars. There are 3 stars which represent the handle of the spoon or the handle of the dipper, and there are 4 stars. There are 4 stars to represent the bowl of the spoon. There are 3 stars to represent the handle of the spoon, and there are 4 stars to represent the bowl of the spoon. Okay, so totally how much stars are there in this constellation? There are 7 stars. Okay, so now let's talk about the various names of Ursa Major. We will talk about the other names given for Ursa Major. So they are Saptarishi, Great Bear, and also Big Dipper. So these are the 3 names which are given to Ursa Major. Okay, so these are the three names, the other names which are given for Ursa Major. So now let's talk about our next constellation, and it is kind of like a sister or brother to this constellation. So now we are going to talk about the second constellation, and that is Ursa Minor. So in the name itself, you can see the name itself suggests that these two constellations are similar in some way. Okay, so how it is similar? They are similar in the shape that they represent. So Ursa Minor also represents the shape of a dipper. Okay, so they represent the same shape. Okay, so even though these two constellations represent the same shape, they are two different groups of stars, very different group of stars. Okay, so that is the reason why they are two different constellations. Okay, so this is what is the thing. And another thing that you observe here, this constellation is given the name Ursa Minor, and this constellation is given the name Ursa Major. Why is that? So the name itself suggests, this word itself suggests this Ursa Minor as a whole is smaller than Ursa Major. So this words major and minor suggest that Ursa Minor is smaller than Ursa Major. So this constellation is smaller than this constellation, which is Ursa Major. So this is why this is called major and this is called minor. Okay, so this is a main point to be considered. So now let's talk about the other names given to this constellation. Okay, so the other names for this constellation are the Little Dipper and Little Bear. So these are the other names for the constellation. So now let's move on to the next constellation, and that is the constellation of Cassiopeia. The constellation of Cassiopeia. So you can clearly see that this is a group of stars. It is a group of stars. So what shape does this Cassiopeia represent? So this Cassiopeia represents the shape of the W. Okay, it represents the shape of W. It represents the shape of W. Or you can also say it represents the shape of the inverse of M. Okay, isn't it? So M is written like this, and the inverse shape of M is something like this, isn't it? So you can also say Cassiopeia represents the inverse shape of M. Okay, so Cassiopeia represents the shape of W or the inverse of M. Okay, so now we talked about the Ursa Major, we talked about the Ursa Minor, and now we also talked about the Cassiopeia. Now let's talk about the last constellation. Okay, and that is Orion. We are going to talk about Orion. So you can clearly see that it is a group of stars. And what does this represent? What does this Orion represent? As you can see, it represents this shape of this character. It represents the shape of this Greek mythological character. Okay, so this character is a hunter with the sword and shield. Okay, so this constellation represents the shape of a hunter with a sword with his shield. Okay, so this is what is this constellation Orion representing. Okay, so this represents the shape of a hunter with a sword and shield. So this Orion is visible in the northern hemisphere during winter season. So now we have talked about constellations. So thank you for watching and subscribe to my channel WINGRAVITA, and stay tuned for more videos.